Hello, Matt. Hello, singers, and welcome to Singing Revealed. Matt, thanks again for the live stream yesterday. It was very informative, very beneficial, very useful. I hope a lot of people will get to enjoy that and learn from that by accessing our archive in the future. We got a lot of positive feedback. I think you read a lot of that in the chat, and I'm happy to hear that because I do value you and what you do and your teaching style and pedagogy very much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It's always fun to be able to share with others and other like-minded people. So it's a joy.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to do our Q&A session now, and it was a very lively session, meaning we had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
We're going to start off with some questions that are a little bit quicker answers, and Matt and I will try and restrain ourselves from elaborating.
Restraint is the correct way of phrasing that. Yes.
Yeah, because if you get together with people who are like-minded and passionate about the same subject matter, you tend to have the capacity to have a conversation about a one-word answer for hours.
Yep. True.
So let me start off with the first question here. And the question is, would a deviated septum help contribute to laryngitis?
That's an interesting question. Probably not, right? The deviated septum is more of an abnormality in your nose, so it's not going to really have a major impact to the vocal folds themselves. Where you may run into some trouble is sometimes people that do have a deviated septum, they may experience more post-nasal drip. And so I did have a client many years ago who, once she got her deviated septum corrected, she felt like she had less post-nasal drip. And, if you're somebody who has bad allergies or you get a lot of colds, and then those colds or those allergies turn into some sort of a laryngitis, bacterial laryngitis, viral laryngitis, usually it's more of a bronchitis. That some of that phlegm and stuff that's dripping down from your nose gets into your lungs and agitates it, then yeah, you may see some positive impact by getting that corrected. More than likely, though, it's just going to help maybe make some of your resonance a little bit easier to adjust. You may find that you have a little less nasality once you get that deviated septum corrected, and it may be easier to get that soft palate all the way up. I know plenty of singers who sing with a deviated septum and don't have problems. So I think that, it's highly unlikely that that's the sole cause of any laryngitis you're having. But if you're, wondering about it and you feel like I do get a lot of postnasal drip, I really wonder if that's contributing to this. That's something you could see a regular ear, nose, and throat doctor for. On this, we talked about board certified laryngologists. If there's one nearby, that'd be great to go see. But a standard ear, nose, and throat doctor should be able to take a look at that deviated septum and talk to you about what they see and how much they think that may be contributing to excessive postnasal drip, which could then, result in problems down at the laryngeal level.
Yeah, that's a very, very thorough answer. I appreciate it very much. I had a deviated septum, and I got it corrected, but mainly because if I lay down on one side of the pillow with one side of my face, I couldn't breathe anymore through my nose. And but I didn't notice personally any difference in my singing before or after, but I definitely noticed a difference in air intake. And that's important. If you have the ability in singing, to have a nice, easy, relaxed inhalation through both nostrils, it's quite relaxing. And besides, I slept better. So
yeah, that's true. I think that's actually, though, a great point, Philippe, is that if you're running into trouble sleeping at night, that will fatigue you, and you will feel that at your laryngeal level if you're constantly fatigued from not sleeping well.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Fun question. We've got another fun question now. So, which are the best herbal teas? So we've got a lot of, there's a lot of myths about singing, and there's a lot of singers' remedies, and I am in the camp that I never ever had my special tea or very few special products because I didn't want to get stuck at some point where I couldn't get that tea and have to sing and freak out and go into psychological panic. I actually eat whatever I want to eat and just make sure I do a good technical warm up to get the voice active, and it's worked great for me. Of course, I'm not going to have a glass of milk before I go on stage or something that's really going to produce mucus. And I do have some teas that I like, but this tends to be very personal. Some singers, see, it's early in the morning here, so I got to clear my voice. But some singers would take, and you have to be careful with herbal teas because the etheric oils. So that will thin out. Maybe I should get one right now.
Early morning voice.
That will thin out the mucus, right? So, and if you are someone that has a dry voice, that's actually going to irritate your vocal folds because it'll make them more dry and your voice is going to produce more mucus. If you're somebody that's very mucusy, you might find relief. But I think you need to experiment with some herbal tea remedies if you like drinking tea, and just find out which ones actually help you personally, or let's say give you comfort and peace of mind and a sense of well-being. So I can't personally say that there are certain herbal teas that are scientifically proven to help the singer, because singers might have different needs. I know a lot of people like this tea called throat coat. I tried that because I had clients telling me, you got to get throat coat, and what it did to me was just cover me in mucus, and I was talking all day long. So be careful when you introduce anything new to your diet before singing. Try it out for a couple days, experiment and see what works for you. What do you know about teas?
I tried throat coat and I just couldn't stand the taste of it. It just, to me, the thought of drinking it, it just worth it. I'm not somebody who really has good responses to herbal medicines. I've tried them for lots of different things, blood sugar control, other things, and I've seen zero response. I don't doubt that they work. I think for some people, certain things work really well, because what we do know is that everyone's body chemistry is a little bit different. And some people's body might actually do really well with that uptake. I mean, clearly, like there's one, cinnamon is supposed to help lower your blood sugar. Tons of people have results. It doesn't do anything for me. I wish it did, but it doesn't. But I believe for some people it does. So I think that we got to look at all interventions and help people find the ones that work for them. So if you find a tea that you like and it seems to be giving you some comfort, great. A throat coat's the number one that I hear about. I hear about slippery elm is another one that people will find helpful. Again, I tried that one time, wasn't for me. I think that there's a lot of people who will talk about lemon teas and things like that being good. I think you have to tread carefully with that. I think it might feel good. It might help get some of the mucus out of your mouth, out of the back of your pharynx if it's thick, but it could also cause acid reflux because of the acidity. And the acid reflux could end up causing a problem. Now, there's one other big mistake that singers often make is they get so obsessed about not being dry that they take the drinking of the water to the far extreme. So, like we talked about on yesterday's show, is making sure you're drinking about half your body weight in ounces a day. But then some people will walk around with an entire gallon jug. I know I did this at one point too, because I was obsessed. I figured more must be better. And I would drink all that. And I constantly felt dry. And then many years after that, as when I was young, many years after that, I was sitting at the Voice Foundation listening to a laryngologist talk about it and saying that, actually, if you're drinking water all day, you're washing away the mucus that coats your pharynx that makes you feel hydrated. So you actually can end up drinking yourself into a state of dryness because you're washing everything away. So what he said is you need to stop drinking water for at least 15 minutes and then see how you feel at the end of 15 minutes. Because in the course of 15 minutes, you should start to feel some of that natural lubrication coming back. And then if you can even wait 30 minutes to an hour, you'll get a better idea of how hydrated or dehydrated you actually are. Mm-hmm. There's a good chance your dehydration is actually too much water that you're constantly drinking that's flushing out all the beneficial things. Just remember, with anything you drink, never touches your vocal folds. The gold standard is water. Yeah. Water is the only thing that's going to really contribute to hydration, and any herbal teas or herbal supplements may help reduce swelling, But what we also know is that over-the-counter medicines that reduce swelling, things like NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, aspirin, and naproxen, actually make you more prone to a vocal hemorrhage.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not even know that you have a vein laying high on the surface of your vocal folds until you've busted it from a hemorrhage thickness, right? I just literally got off of a lesson with a client who just got scoped down at Vanderbilt. And she went in there actually to look at a tonsil stone issue. Like, hey, let's look at your vocal folds. She's got a vein that's laying really high on the surface, right near the vibrating edge. And the doctor was telling her the same thing I was, is you're somebody that needs to be especially careful with those anti-inflammatory products because you are at a high risk if you do that.
Yeah.
Right. So, tread carefully, look up what it's actually doing. If it works for you, rock on. If it doesn't, don't do it. And, Philippe, at one point in time, I used to carry around a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew when I was doing those outreach tours. And my bright early morning, I didn't like coffee because I didn't like the milk and the creamer either, but I love my Mountain Dew. And I think most vocologists and laryngologists would freak out and say, how did you do that? My only guess is the acid of the Mountain Dew ate away any mucus on the way down. So it just made me feel like it was good. Don't recommend, but we all do at some point in our career find the thing that we think works for us. So, find what does well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to come back to hydration because there's some interesting science on that. And just in Germany, I lived in Europe for many years and performed there for decades, really. And there's a tea that people drink when they have sore throat, or a lot of singers drink it. It's called Fenchel Anis Kreuzkümmel. So fennel, anise, and cumin. And it's a great combination. But like I said, some people might react differently to this. So if most of the herbal teas, because of the oils and etherical oils, they're going to thin out the mucus. So if you're drinking those kind of teas, like peppermint, for example, is really going to thin out the mucus because it has very strong oils. Whereas maybe a chamomile or a fennel, anise, cumin are a little bit more mild and have this tradition elderberry of helping your health. But it's really about feel good, and noticing what it does for you. But I strongly recommend don't get in the habit of needing to drink a certain recipe before you sing, because you'll be stuck with it for life. And even if it's not true, your body will adjust and depend on it, and you might get into some psychological stress if you find yourself without it. Some interesting research because one of my sons is a competition level athlete, and we're always concerned about hydration. Where we live, you've got to play soccer in 112, 115 degree weather Fahrenheit. That's around 40 degrees or more Celsius. So, and very dry. And this is about a year and a half ago. I can't quote the source right now, but I read that regarding hydration, that if you eat a banana, at one point drinking water, like Matt said, is the best, but the body hits a level where it can't absorb it quickly, and it will just, you'll just get rid of it. But one banana and foods actually hydrate you more after your first saturation point in water than drinking another 2 glasses or quart of water. It's super fascinating. So, yeah, did you want to say something there?
No, I was just writing it down because now I want to look it up. I
Yeah.
was just interested. I mean, it makes sense because I know the bananas are packed full of vitamins, and vitamins affect the way that our tissues, our muscles absorb, different things.
And also one of the findings was that drinking with some food helps hydration. So it's very fascinating. I think that's some great advice, and we tried it out, and it definitely works. So when we're talking about hydrating the vocal folds and the mucosa and the pharynx, like Matt said, we can't put water on it. This is coming from the in to the out, from the inside of the body to these mucous membranes. So our full body hydration actually needs to be really good to have a consistent, healthy mucosal hydration, if you can call it that. Let's move on to the next question. This is a very interesting question as well. And we have We're in America, so I love if we hear somebody say, "What say you?" You know, we get a smile and say, "Where's this person from?" But the great thing about Voice Masters live streams, we do have people tuning in from all around the globe. So, what say you about the effects of smoking weed or eating edibles by a vocalist and impact on the vocal folds, etc.? This was kind of a discussion in the thread, so I added some little bits. Thank you. My biggest concern, honestly, is the ingestion of different types of edible versions. Singers seem now to understand the negatives of inhaling anything, but seem to not think that edibles are, in essence, muscle relaxers and will have their own adverse effects over time, the same way that alcohol will. It's becoming a huge battle, especially now that it's become more widely used legally.
Yeah. So I think that like what you say, and I did catch when we were going through, somebody had asked about vaping and other things. We don't have enough research. We know that like when you're vaping oils, you're definitely bringing in the smoke at a lower temperature than you are if you're trying to hit like a joint or especially a bowl. Is if you're using a bowl and you're lighting the lighter, you're sucking in like hundreds and hundreds of degrees of heat right across your vocal folds. That's not a good thing. Water bongs appear to be better. Ice water bongs are probably the best of the actual smoking devices because they cool down the smoke a little, but we still don't even, because in the United States, until it's fully legal for even medical, trying to get research dollars to research what is actually in the smoke is next to impossible. So it's hard for us to be able to have the hard data that we really need to be able to say, yes, that water bong is safer than a joint. So we don't know. We also don't fully understand what are in these distillate cartridges, right? You have some that use CO2 extraction methods, and then you have others that use other extraction methods. And as we saw before COVID, we had a whole thing going on with people having weird lung problems because of some of the oils they had used. Well, if those oils are clogging up the alveoli inside of the lungs, well, what are they doing to the vocal folds as they go over top of the vocal folds?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We do have some information on, nicotine vaping versus smoking, which does seem to be lower heat, fewer particles, but it's not particle free. There still seems to be some things that within the vape pens, like a Juul, that could still be irritants to that mucosa of the vocal folds. Now, on the edible side, again, we're not actually having anything that touches the vocal folds when you're swallowing that, and then you don't get, if you're using straight up edibles, you're not going to get an effect for like an hour and a half. If you're using tincture drops that go under your tongue, those start to give you some effect within 15 minutes, but you don't get anything until you really you get an extra after you swallow that can then kick in that hour and a half later. And what a lot of people will notice, as I think they were mentioning, is dryness. So marijuana tends to bring on a lot of dryness throughout the system, and you definitely will feel some vocal effects from that. Now, you mentioned the muscle relaxing properties of it. You're correct. It does help. I have a family member who's got more advanced diabetes who can't take regular pain pills. It's an older family member who's got some serious pain issues. And if they take an edible, all of a sudden the pain goes away. The muscles relax. They feel good. It's better than Vicodin for them. So there is absolutely, even without the research, because I know more than just that person that have had that same experience, and I think you're right. That seems to, though, go away, right? Because this person, they can get the benefit from their edible for their 6 to 8 hours, and then the next day they end up still with pain again, and then they got to decide if it's worth it for them to take medicine or not. So I also, again, don't know that we have enough research to really say that it's going to have a long-term effect of a muscle relaxant, but definitely in the moment. So my general advice to the performers I work with is avoid it when you're performing. So if you know that you're going to perform, your bandmates may be smoking up or doing something else before they get on stage, that's cool, that's fine, but I would avoid it because it's going to give you a lot of dryness for most people. It may have some of those muscle relaxing qualities you have. It may have some anti-inflammatory properties that we don't fully understand yet, again, because we lack the research that could put you on, like if we know that you can take a cannabis for a painkiller when naproxen doesn't work, well, how much is it doing some of the same stuff that naproxen's doing? Is it thinning out blood vessels? Is it doing other things? We can see the blood vessel effect in your eyes. So I think again that we need to, tread cautiously on some of that and probably not be using it before performing because it could end up being a problem. I think outside of performing, if it's not bothering you, then it's fine. If it's starting to feel like it's having a negative impact, probably not okay. And unfortunately, until we get better research, I think that's kind of our baseline understanding that we have to run from.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Also, one of the hardest things with edibles is to get the exact right dose. It's and your personal body chemistry of the day plays on a day-to-day basis actually plays a role in that. So yeah, if we could, everybody say you're really nervous and you need to calm down, and you could just get the perfect dose every time, it might help relax the muscles. But then you also have that other side effect where your perception might get altered slightly. At what point does that happen? And what point do your perception during singing and of how you're hearing things, how it's just a simple thing. How many drunk people are singing and feeling like they sound, godly, and very, very
Yeah.
embarrassing on the recording, right?
Karaoke nights across the country. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, be careful with it. And I agree with
Check your strains. I think what you just hit something else I didn't even mention was the strains. I mean, a sativa that amps you up may make you over sing. An indica that makes you just fall into the couch may make it hard for you to have any muscle control of anything. So I think that there's also probably that. And I think Philippe, you brought up a good point about the anxiety. Don't forget the benefits of CBD oil. And so, the CBD, I tell you, I had a terrible a case of strep throat recent. This maybe it's pre-COVID, but a terrible case of strep throat. Nothing was working. I was stuck at home, and I said to my wife, "Please just go pick me up like a bottle of CBD. Let me see if that'll help take the swelling down because nothing's working." And sure enough, I used those drops, and I don't know if it was placebo or if it really worked, but I felt like the inflammation was gone in an hour, and I could swallow. And
wow.
it really made a difference. So, I mean, again, with it being an anti-inflammatory, we don't know what impact that may have throughout the rest of your system. But I mean, some of these CBD oils that you can pick up in stores, I've definitely seen an impact. I've seen it with students too, that students with anxiety issues find that CBD oil can really, really help them. So, if you're looking for a non-THC alternative, check that out to deal with anxiety. It may give you what you're looking for without some of the drying that you get from the full-on cannabis.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, so just be careful, singers. It's not good generally. Oh, well, I don't know really any case that it's, or let's say very, very few cases, a good idea to ingest anything before your performance because you might be losing control, and you want to be in control and have all your senses aware. There we go. What do you think about Estill method?
Good. So I talked about this a little bit, and I mentioned it the other day. I think for years and years and years, one of my mentors, who I adore, but one of the people that helped me get down on my path of teaching, was very adamantly against certain methodologies. And I just always had a problem with that because then I'd hear singers that came out of some of these methodologies. I'd be like, but they're good. Like that person sounds good. And my mentor's argument was, well, that's one person. Well, this world is billions of people, so I don't know if it really is only one person or if I can find other people who are also getting great results from a given method. I think with any method, including my own, you're going to find people who respond well to it and who don't. I graduated a student a couple years ago from my university that I adore. The girl sees things in colors. She tells you that her high notes are red or bright red or dark red. And you ask her what that is to her, and she can't really tell you anything but color. You say, "What do you feel anything?" "No." "Does it place anywhere?" "Not really." "How do you repeat that?" "I don't know. I just do. It's red." I'm not the teacher for her. I admired this student so much, and I want nothing but the best for her. I found a teacher that was for her, and she's doing great.
Yeah.
But, nobody is for everybody, and that's okay. The Estill method works with a lot of recipes, and you got to understand history. The history of the Estill method was that she was trying to bring legitimacy to these musical theater and commercial music styles when everybody was just saying, "Oh, that's just garbage singing," and they wanted nothing to do with it. So Jo Estill, she fought a massive battle, and we all have a huge debt of gratitude towards her for the work that she did. She was one of the first people to try to use research and x-ray images to find out what was actually going on to help singers understand what was happening in their voice. She's also passed away a good 10 or more years. I can't remember exactly. And it's now her disciples is a bad word. It feels cult-like, but the people that she taught who now carry on her work are the ones who do that. Now, I've had talks with some of these people who are high up in the Estill leadership, and you have a mix of people who really want to stay more on the conservative side of sticking to the truth of what Estill did, even if we have some science that suggests it might be a little different now. And then you have a set of people in the Estill method who are trying to integrate some of the new scientific understanding into it. So you're going to find that with everything. You're going to find that in any technique where the founder is no longer with us. Does that mean we throw it out? I lean on the side of no, because I think that we have to learn from those who came before us and those who are doing great work instead of just going, well, they're not here anymore, throw that out. I also think we have to look at anything that's producing good results with some people and go, well, why does that work? What are they figuring out? What could I learn from that? And the way we do that is consider the lens through which they're seeing the world. Joe Estill was seeing the world through a lens of somebody who worked with a lot of music theater people who needed ways to help them navigate musical theater styles where everything's different. You'll have something that's more rock like Hair, or then you back, when she was doing this work, or Carousel. So Hair and Carousel were more of the extremes back then than nowadays where we have Rock of Ages and American Idiot. And she knew she had to help her clients figure out how to get into one sound and then get into another. So these recipes that she came up with really help some singers who have to jump between multiple styles know exactly where they're going. Now, other people will tell you, well, that makes it too rigid and it makes it too formulaic. And I don't want to be up on stage thinking I now have to do soft palate position 2 with sob quality, with false vocal fold retraction on top of thick fold, because that takes me out of my storytelling. I think that's a totally valid point of view. And if your voice responds more from another approach that lets you get to where you need to go, then that's probably the approach for you. But I definitely think we need to be looking at what everybody is doing and working with it and trying to learn everything that we can from it, because that's the only way that we all advance and grow together.
Yeah. Hey, got a visitor. No problem. No problem. Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Do we need to redo that?
Oh, were you recording?
Yes, I told you that.
I didn't know you were recording. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It happens. I think it's very sympathetic. We're real people. We have families. And
my wife is desperately trying to keep me fed because I have a bad habit of scheduling myself, 6 hours with no break. So, but she's a voice teacher too, and her and I have these talks as well. So let's get back to just summarizing that is, my opinion of the Estill method is nothing of that but admiration for somebody who broke a mold and said, these singers deserve respect. These singers deserve techniques that work for them. And she did everything in her power at the time she was alive to give us answers. I think we have some new science available that may say and indicate that some of the things that she thought she discovered may not be as accurate as we thought. And that's not a slight.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a high-speed, 4K video camera to capture images in the 1980s, that wasn't her fault. That was just technology. So that's why I also think that we want to learn from what Estill has to do, and we want to learn from what today's pedagogues are saying and what they're bringing into the mix. And we want to merge everything together and be open-minded until we find the tools that work for the singer in the context they work in and the style of music that they sing. And then I think we all grow together and everybody finds their sweet spot.
Yeah, thank you. I really don't have anything to add to that because I thought that was great. I just want to reaffirm that there have been many pioneers that have brought about positive change, and Estill is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
And I am also a believer that we need to see if the methodology is working for some people, then I think that's great. And there's a ton of value in the Estill method, as there is a ton of value in a lot of other methods. I think if you want to continue, if you want to keep your growth mindset, and there we go again, and continue to improve and learn, you've got to be willing to accept the fact that of advancement. If we didn't accept the value of the pioneers that came in the past, why would we even talk about bel canto singing anymore? It's like saying, what do you think of bel canto singing? What do you think of Estill? Of course, it's hard for us to know exactly what you mean by that question, but generally, I fully agree with Matt on that subject. And thanks for asking the question. It gives us a chance to share our point of view that we shouldn't be fixated within a methodology to believe, this is my opinion, that only that methodology has all the answers. That, for me, is a big mistake. But we should also respect the efforts and thought and research and time that went into just trying to help singers everywhere. And any system that produces great results, even if it's for 10% of singers, I'm really happy about that, because those 10% of singers, they got a lot of value out of that. No system works for everybody. When is it better to use the nasal spray, before or after singing, or it depends on the singer? And you were talking, I believe, about the benefits of using a saline spray and that it's really practical and you can't overdose with it.
Before. I would use it before. I mean, you can use it after singing if you feel like there's stuff in there, but the whole idea is to thin out any secretions in your nasal cavity to help get them out. So after you spray, you're going to end up wanting to blow your nose. When you blow your nose, it's going to get some of that mucus out, the thicker mucus out. They say it has the stuff that remains behind has a thinning effect, so it's a positive benefit. So beforehand, and then if after you're done singing you feel like, oh, I still feel a little gunky in there, go ahead and spray it. Now, I do say you can't really overdose on it. I'm sure you can't overdose on water, except for the people who have overdosed on water, who have been like, I'm going to drink 10 gallons today. And yes, you will literally die if you try to drink 10 gallons of water in a day. So, again, just to clarify on that for liability's sake, if you feel like you have to squirt saline nasal spray on your nose every 5 minutes, please go see a ear, nose, and throat doctor. I'd say probably more realistic is every hour you squirt a little bit in there, like one squirt on each nose when you're real congested, to make sure, like on the onset of a cold or the onset of an allergy attack, you're going to do it more frequently. But then when your nose feels clear, you're probably done. And if you're going a day or two and you just can't breathe out of your nose, you probably are getting a sinus infection. And, you have to look at what your doctor likes to do about those. Some doctors today like to ride them out because we were getting antibiotic resistance. Other doctors will give you a steroid or an antibiotic to help. But, beyond 2 to 3 days, I'd be asking the doctor what's going on.
Yeah, that's some good advice. And there are also nasal rinses that work in the same way. They're not as convenient because you really flushing everything out. But a lot of people, I use those as well, and I find relief. But I'm usually using those if I'm feeling really dry or too stuffed up, just to help alleviate that. And that alleviation just makes me feel generally much better and helps. But so using a nasal rinse isn't really going to affect your vocal folds, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's not going to. I mean, it's going to impact the mucus in your nose that could drop down and hit your vocal folds, but it's not hitting your vocal folds. You're preventing postnasal drip is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, or thinning out whatever's dripping down.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, you're not going to necessarily prevent it.
Cool. Let's move on to the next question here. What are the benefits of steam / nebulizers? Let's talk about steam and nebulizers. That was me putting that in. Are steam molecules too big versus nebulizers to get to the folds? And you'd mentioned in the live stream there's some new research on that. People used to steam all the time, and I heard for many years, well, the steam's really not getting to the vocal folds where a nebulizer, a good nebulizer, can. So what do you have any thoughts on that and recommendations? What kind of nebulizers, elaborate?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen plenty of research that all says exactly what you just said on that last slide, that the steam particles are too big to actually be beneficial. The nebulizer ones are smaller, they're beneficial. I mentioned in the live stream that the saline itself is more chemically similar to the mucosa that coats your vocal folds than pure water. And that's, again, why that saline solution is a better thing for you. The nebulizers that are sold over the counter, you can get expensive ones that run you $200. If you want something that's affordable for most singers, you're probably going to end up on Amazon.com, and you're going to order some that are made overseas where unfortunately they're not well regulated. And so they work if they have good reviews. I've tried some. I've had plenty of clients just grab one that had good reviews and they work. But I don't have any like set name brands to give you because unfortunately, even the one that I have that I like, I went through two different ones. The first one I didn't like at all. The second one works great. But then when I went to go send somebody the link, it's no longer available.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to get on there and look for reviews. I mentioned in the live stream, I usually say look for 1,000 reviews or more on those things because enough people are buying them. You can find the products that have those 1,000 reviews, because when you're in the 100, 200 reviews, you could be getting fake reviews and not knowing exactly what it is that you're getting. And so you make sure that you look through there. And I always like to click on the 5 stars and the 1-star reviews. Sometimes as you're reading through the 1-star, you'll be like, that sounds like user error. Or if you see 21 stars that all say it worked 2 days and quit working, there's a good chance maybe it's not. So I would check on over there to look for those. In general, though you could still use the steam if you are like thinking that you're having an allergy attack or bronchitis or something and the heat feels good to you. The steamers, like I used to use, like you were saying, I had one that I took with me everywhere when I would perform. I used to sit in my dressing room with it on my table. And it was the one that went over my nose and my mouth. And the steam in my nose would definitely break up any nasal congestion that I had. So I don't know that we want to throw them away completely for people who do have nasal congestion issues, but you would just instead combine it with the nebulizer so that you got both the nasal cavity benefits and the vocal fold level benefits by using both devices.
Yeah, that's great advice. I've been on so many stages, backstage theaters. The environment that you have to sing in is constantly changing as well, and some theaters are just brutally dry. And being able to have some steam, you're not supposed to. Well, this is what I was told. Again, I'm not quoting research here, but I've found it to be true as well. That when you steam, that it is going to affect your nasal passage, your pharynx. It's going to get into the lungs. Does it really get into the lungs? Yes, I'd say I can't say for sure, but you're definitely going to feel it in the pharynx. If it's not getting to the vocal folds, it's attaching itself in the mouth and the nose and the pharynx. It does feel good, especially if you're feeling dry. But I've also heard that it's probably not a good idea to do that immediately before you sing, because if you're changing the environment, your body is going to readjust to that. So if you're doing that 10-15 minutes right before you go on stage, you might have just a normal adjustment happen, whereas if you do it maybe an hour to an hour and a half before, then your body is going to accommodate itself again. At least that's the advice I was following, and I found worked well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know how it is to be inside and walk outside and you breathe in that cold air. You feel that. Well, it's not the same, but if you had a lot of hot air and you step onto a 68-degree stage, there's a difference. It could impact your singing.
Yeah, so be cautious with anything you do immediately before you sing, but definitely for maintaining your vocal health and soothing and taking care of your voice. I am going to actually, that's on my Christmas list.
Nebulizer.
A new nebulizer, yeah. Cool. What do you think has been the most important scientific discovery related to singing, the one that has the greatest impact on making us better singers? Thank you.
Jeez, that is a hard question.
I know you're going to make us sound like we're, scientific.
I would say
A better singer. That's a good qualifying point, because there's been a lot of amazing discoveries, but which one of these amazing important discoveries has the greatest impact on making us a better singer? I think it's a matter of opinion, really.
Yeah, because I'm thinking multiple ones that could be different for different singers as well.
Yeah.
I think the greatest discovery, probably, if we really want to get down to it, goes all the way back to the 1800s when Manuel Garcia pulled out a mirror and looked inside of a singer's voice or a singer's mouth with the mirror to see the vocal folds. because visualizing the vocal folds changed a lot. He was the one who invented this idea of laryngeal registration, of dealing with the coordination of the muscles at the laryngeal level. Had he not done that, we may not have progressed to where we are now. So I would say, like, in the grand history scheme of things, Manuel Garcia deciding to look inside of the vocal folds was probably the biggest discovery. I would say.
I think that's great. You could also, I mean, I would also put forth, and this isn't one. This is related. It's still related to Manuel Garcia, but for me, one major thing that I think has a huge impact is just our advancement in technology, in what we can actually now observe. That let's be honest, like you said, 40 years ago, this wasn't possible. 30 years ago, we're getting better MRI machines, we're getting better cameras, high definition, high speed. The imagery that's coming out within the last, five years even is so much better than it was 10 years ago. That really helps tremendously, but it's still, like you said, it's an evolution on that thought.
Yeah, I'd say, like, to me, probably then, if we had to look at what the most recent research that's probably going to long-term have the biggest impact would be some of the work that Ingo Tietz has been really pioneering and delivering to the world about reactive inertance, vocal tract inertance. So which is basically that when we make sound, let me grab my head. I've got, not this end, this one. So on this head model, these are the vocal folds down here, and the vocal folds produce vibrations. Well, we used to have this linear idea of sound production, and the linear theory of vocal production that comes before all this reactive inertance research and the way that the acoustics play down here. We believe that the voice started at the breath flowed up through the vocal folds, that created a sound that flowed through the vocal tract, and it was a linear process. You had to fix the breath to get the vocal folds to work, to get the vocal tract to work, and then the sound went out and we're done. And what Ingo and Johann Sundberg and a lot of our great scientists have helped us understand is that actually any changes that you make in here is going to change the way that air actually travels back to the vocal folds, right? Because what happens is the air is traveling through your vocal tract, it hits the open lips, there's a difference in atmospheric pressure outside of your body than in. So some of the air, some of the sound waves actually travel backwards. And that backwards travel can push down onto those vocal folds and either help shove them tighter together or more apart, depending on the vowel configuration. And this is actually what we take advantage of with straw phonation. When you're doing straw phonation, you're using a straw to help limit the amount of air that can escape, to get air cycling back, to help part the vocal folds a little bit to get you into a more efficient vibrational pattern. Now, why is that one of the most significant findings? Well, because it changes our mindset about that linearity and transitions us to a non-linear idea of vocal production. And in that non-linear idea, now we start looking at the whole system as being responsible for the sounds that we make. And then we understand that if I close a vowel, it's going to change the way that air can travel through the vocal folds, which means I might have to change my respiratory approach. Versus an open vowel on the same pitch, which is going to change again the way that air flows out, which will change the way the vocal folds vibrate, which may change the way I need to breathe and use my respiratory system. So I think the key next steps in this evolution is going to be for us to start getting more and more data through both the computer simulations that Dr. Tita is running. There's a lot of simulations that are being done over in Asia right now where they're making models and they're researching, well, what happens if I drop this in? What does that do? How does that affect things? And what we're going to eventually have to do is figure out how to simplify it into usable information. Because right now the math is so complex, I can't get through it, right? I'm lucky I got out of high school. Not a math person. And so I look at that and I admire it and I believe them, but I can't quote you the formulas. Yeah. I think what we will find out, like we have with everything else, is 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to know that oo vowels change your vibrational pattern by lightening it up by 10%. Or something like that. That's just random numbers, random facts. Or we'll find out that if you open your mouth opening to 3/4 of an inch, that is going to increase vocal fold closure by 7%. We'll probably start to get some ideas of that, or we'll walk away and go, everybody's different. And truly, you can't have anything that's consistent across the board, which just reinforces what Philippe and I were talking about when we came up with the Estill discussion, which is everybody's different and we got to train everybody different. But this research may be the proof that we need to help people truly understand that and commit to that, who are still on the fence and who are still thinking that maybe there is only one way. So I think that's going to be our next big breakthrough, is as all this work continues to happen, we get more data points from more types of singers, more people doing the work who explain it in different ways until we get the ultimate clarity that's really going to lead to some other breakthroughs in our training.
Yeah, that is great. I am also grateful for Ingo Tietz's research, and I think this is very transformative for the way people think about singing, like you said, rather than linear, or that you need this and this to make this. The idea that your vocal fold activity is affected by the configuration in your vocal tract. That not just the configuration is important, but actually how it affects the vocal folds. That's in evolution right now, and I think for me it's very liberating and helps understand a lot of things. I mean, you can go back to Sundberg's work on formants and harmonics, harmonic boost. You could say that just the spectral analysis, the spectrogram for the voice, and being able to target harmonics and frequencies for each style. All these things are very impactful. I'm also looking forward to the research coming up on that we'll have a presentation about on overtones. I think that's going to have a huge impact. But again, it all ties in with that
Reactive inertance, I'm pretty sure is what I've seen. There's also several terms that get thrown around on that as well. So yeah,
yeah.
but
If we call it I think people used to, before getting more detailed about it, but we call it a simple thing is just the supraglottal pressure or the postglottal pressure, the pressure at the glottis. But that's important. And why is it important? Because again, it's that cycling effect. And Ingo Tietze talked about, which I personally find super fascinating, that the shape of the internal shape of the epilarynx, when you get it in the right position, matches exactly the internal shape of your ear, and that there's some sort of energetic and sound sync that happens there. And he's also talking about that the voice itself is a receptor for a sound and not just a producer of sound. So there's a lot of things that are being investigated. But yeah, lots of fun.
It was interesting. I was out there. I was in Salt Lake City at the National Center for Voice and Speech, and Ingo's daughter took me back and scoped me. And so Karen took me in, scoped me, and she's like, "You have an omega shaped epiglottis," and I was like, "What?" And then she was explaining to me they're now looking at the shapes of the epiglottis and the way that the epiglottis shape may give some people a certain extra buzz. And she said that's probably why your voice is so pingy and ringy, is because of the shape of your epiglottis. And I was like, wow, that makes sense. I just had never thought of it until she was commenting on my my epiglottis shape. So yeah, that's fascinating stuff that they do. Ingo's team out there in Salt Lake City. It's if you want to look them up, it's the National Center for Voice and Speech. A brilliant man, very kind, caring man. Somebody to definitely learn from while we can.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan. I've met with Ingo several times and actually had him come to a workshop for some of my clients. Great, very fun, and Matt and I could go on and on about this. But so for the singer, what does that mean for the singer, and why is that so important for the singer? It's because it's going to, like Matt said, it's going to change perception. It's going to help you understand better why your voice is working the way it does, and it will probably just connect a lot of dots and help you design, in my personal terms, it'll help you design your sound better.
I like that. Yeah.
Thick fold closure or long closed, it's misspelled right there, long closed quotient. So fold mass and closed quotient, quotient closure, or open quotient are synonymous. We touched on this during the live stream, but the quick answer is yes.
Yeah. The closed quotient's the measurement of how long the vocal folds are closed in any vibratory cycle, and they do that in percentages. So they're 75% closed, 30% closed. I mean, 100% closed is holding your breath. 0% closed is inhaling. So we're always at some percentage in a vibrational pattern. And I just find that talking with my clients and saying, I want to add more closed quotient to this moment is kind of a mood killer. Kind of a storytelling killer. So I tend to say things like put more chest, put more buzz, put more thick fold in there. I mean, even with other clients, I mean, again, and I think this goes what, Philippe was saying is in his live stream 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I guess, is that terminology can be a big hang up. I'll even say reedy and fluty. And I use a digital keyboard, especially, at home and online. Teaching, and I'll pull up sometimes the reed effect and play like an oboe sound and be like, let's listen to how this is close to a chest dominant mix. And I'll pull up the flute sound and play that and be like, let's listen to how this is similar to a head dominant mix. Because I find for some clients, those references to reed instruments and air powered instruments like the flute work better for them to distinguish thick and thin than those actual terms thick and thin. So, and then some of my clients like, and I think this may be also from Estill. I remember seeing it, I think, at an Estill presentation. I like to use this 4-finger vocal fold model, where I say the 4 is your full, thick fold. Then we kind of thin out to more of a chest mix, a heady mix, and a head. I've seen other people use this model, but I find that a lot of my students find it helpful to think of thick fold, thin fold, and then use their hands to model it. So they have a kinesthetic awareness external that they can see, as they then try to match the internal action that's happening in their larynx.
I think we gotta practice that.
Yeah. Modeling that vocal fold wave.
Yeah, I just want to say, thick fold is not a scientific term, right? No. It's not. It's just a lot of the words we use in teaching singing are trying to help match help that singer come to an awareness to create the coordination. Imaging, we just imaging like Matt just said, this kinesthetic awareness. But I think what it boils down to is a closed quotient. A longer closed quotient is going to require more vocal fold mass. That's
involved. Well, and what it is, so like here's how you would get, so you get to get that actual closed quotient number, you use an EGG, and the EGG is 2 little metal electrodes that go on the side of your larynx, and they tell you the close rate. So here we would see where it closes, and then it drops and it opens up. Well, if we turn that on its side, and then if we mirrored that thing a little bit like that, then we start to get a better image of what that vocal fold closure might look like. So this is a model of like what a head voice closure would look like. Then I put on this other side, here's more of what a long close phase would look like, right? It closes up, there's the long phase. And so again, I'm a terrible visual artist, so bear with me, it'll look like my 4-year-old's drawings. But if we mirror that and flip it from its, place that you would see in the meter, you flip it like that. Now we have that general visual of what that closed phase looks like. And that's why I call that one more of a thick fold production versus this one more of a thin fold production. Yeah. Because look at that part of that closed phase where it's right there. That's a small little part that's coming together versus this. Whereas if we drew a straight line, we'd have more of a thicker rectangular part coming together. Right. And they have chymography is one of the other tools that we have to kind of show us that. And with all of this stuff, like Philippe said, we're getting more and more technology that's easily accessible, that's more accurate. So I think we also just need to stay open-minded. I don't think we're going to find massive changes in that, but we might find some changes to our understanding of how much variation is actually happening as we continue to get that other work that Ingo's doing.
Yeah, super. I love that. I'm gonna steal that. That is just
somebody else. I think I got it from Don Miller. So.
The waveform, and people call it also the waveform, but it's just measuring how the vocal folds contact and for how long. And they do it that wave has different shapes depending on the sound that you're making. But I love that you just turn it and it just looks like a vocal fold. Yeah. Let's take the next question here. How high can I vocalize in the sword swallowing position? Should I bring awareness to the larynx position while singing in this position? And we did touch on this during the live stream. I think it's fun. Remind people that maybe didn't see the live stream. So imagine you're swallowing a sword. We all know we've got people do sword swallowing artists out there, but the purpose of that is to expand the internal vocal tract. Why would anybody want to do this?
Okay, so we have what are called constrictor muscles. And I don't know if I turn this guy around, if we can see our body over here. So the constrictor muscles run from up here. They have one set to come in around the soft palate, and we have a middle set to come in, and then we have the inferior set that then start to attach down here around the larynx. Now, those muscles surround the larynx, and when they constrict, they help narrow the vocal tract, which is essential for working food down. That's why we have three of them. We have the superior, medial, and inferior. So they kind of contract in a row to guide food down into your esophagus. Great when you're swallowing, horrible when you're singing, because then they engage, you get a lot of tension. So if you put your fingers on the side of your throat and you go, ugh, and do a grunt, you'll feel those muscles come in. Ugh. Then if you sustain that feeling and then try to look up at the sky like you're going to swallow a sword, open your mouth and stick out your tongue, you're going to notice that it's either impossible to keep those muscles engaged or so difficult to keep them engaged that your body will just give up. So the way that you do that is you go, and look up at the sky. Oh yeah, great image, great image. Those are the constrictor muscles, right? So you can see them really well, the superior, medial, and inferior. Yeah, excellent image.
Look that back up for you. This is great. Anatomical apps and websites today are amazing. But I always say it's important when I share this with people. I say the pharyngeal constrictor muscles literally have your voice in their grip.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, absolutely. So, that's what's happening is they're grabbing on. So if you go and do that again, going you'll feel them just get out of the way.
Yeah.
So there is a little magic secret to this, and it's putting the muscle in a state of stretch weakness. Now, if you've ever been to the gym and done bicep curls, you can make an easy connection. If you, let's say, pick up a 25-pound dumbbell and you're curling it from here, you may be just fine. But if you take that same 25-pound dumbbell and you drop it all the way down and then try to curl it up, you're going to end up having to work harder to get it to come back up into that curl position. That's because once you overextend that muscle, you put it into a state of stretch weakness. You've stretched the muscle to the point it is now weak, and it's not going to function as easily as if it was in a more optimal position. So this swallowing a sword, howling at the moon position takes advantage of stretch weakness to get your body to learn how to phonate without involvement of the constrictors. You're looking up, you stretch them out of the way, they give up and don't interfere. Then you vocalize. And as you vocalize, your brain starts to learn that, oh, I can make sound without engaging those constrictor muscles. Huh. Right? And if we do it enough, your body starts going, that feels a lot better.
Yeah.
Because it does. And then as your body starts saying, hey, that feels a lot better, when you then level your head back down, your body's going to say, yeah, I'm not going back to that other thing. And we can get rid of that constriction for good. Now, sometimes singers will go, ah, and then you'll tell them to level out and they'll go, oh, and they're going, man, I can't connect the two. Makes you normal. So what we're going to do is we're going to put stopping points down along the way. I usually add at least 2. If we have to add more, we will. So we go, ah, 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 until you can work your way all the way down. If you start getting stuck between the 2 middle ones, then you just alternate between those until they're no longer stuck. Then you try to get between the last 2. And you just slowly inch your way back down to that resting position. Now, what we mentioned in the live stream, which is worth repeating, is that every exercise has a potential negative side effect. Okay? So, if you have head voice exercises, they're great. Everybody needs to be doing head voice exercises, even if you never perform in public in head voice. But if you only do head voice exercises, you could actually start getting too much weakness in the chest voice part of your voice, where you're going to notice that your mix gets weak. So even a beneficial exercise like head voice, if you run it too far and ignore other parts of your instrument, can imbalance your system. This exercise, when you look up, does allow the larynx to rise. Well, a lot of times people who constrict will be people who also shove their larynx down a little low, especially if we get somebody who comes from a choral background or a classical background that valued that deep sound, okay? And this is a whole other debate about what is classical singing and what's not, and what's good singing and what's not. But if you're walking into the world doing, oh, you're shoving down that larynx and getting those constrictors involved. So when you go from that, oh, you all of a sudden get things out of the way and your larynx does shoot up a little bit. And in that moment, it's actually really beneficial because it's teaching the singer who's used to depressing their larynx how to let it go.
Yeah.
But the potential negative is if you're a singer who sings a lot of rock or a belter or any other singer has a little higher laryngeal position, that larynx will really float up. And then what you're going to notice is when you get into the upper part of your range, it might be really hard to sing because your larynx is too high. So what you want to do is remember that this exercise is not about range building. It's not about the vocal folds actually balancing any kind of registration. It is solely about putting your constrictor muscles in a state of stretch weakness so that your motor system learns that it doesn't need those muscles involved in order to produce sound. Then you only vocalize as high as comfortable and as loud as comfortable to get the maximum benefit from the exercise, which is constriction release, while preserving the rest of the system. And then you use this as an exercise for a specific purpose, meaning to release this constriction. You're not going to use this exercise for the rest of your life. You're going to use it to break your constriction patterns, and you're going to use it if they start to show back up. And then you're going to be moving on to something else because after you've learned that, there's other things that you want to drill your body to be capable of doing. And we're not going to obsess with it. I think that's the key thing with all vocal exercises. Don't obsess. Sometimes we get that result and we're like, oh, I got a really good result doing that exercise. That has to be the one. It's not working today. I don't know why. And we start to obsess about it. So we need to be careful to not fall into that pattern and instead use the exercise while it's beneficial to us and move on to something else when it's not doing much for us. Mm-hmm. Right? And then that's the way that we make sure that we never get stuck.
Yeah, thank you. That was brilliant. I fully agree with that. Fully agree with that. And love the fact you said that you're using it for a specific purpose. And once you've achieved that, the purpose has been served, move on. We do have a question on, and we touched on this in the live stream as well. So this is pretty much a straightforward answer. One of the participants asked, are we not mixing twang and nasality now during one of the demonstrations? And yeah, and yes was the answer. Just very straightforward to answer that question. But maybe we take like 30 seconds and explain. Twang is a word. This is my description of twang. Twang is a word to describe a function. The function is narrowing inside the vocal tract, and that can, according to your methodology, be divided up into the epilaryngeal narrowing in the larynx, pharyngeal narrowing, and even the nasopharynx narrowing. So which starts causing the nasality sound.
Yeah, there's some in Ken Bozeman's book, Practical Vocal Acoustics. He talks a little bit, though, about they're now, instead of even calling it nasality, they're starting to call it VPO, velar-pharyngeal port opening. And I like that because it doesn't have a negative association. It's an anatomical thing that's happening. So we used to believe that, like, for instance, with opera singers, there was always the thought of you must completely seal off this nasal cavity in the back. But Johann Sundberg, he's done a bunch of research back in earlier pre-good technology days. He was literally stuffing cotton balls in different spaces and seeing if light would shine through. I'm glad I didn't do that experiment, and I'm glad we have MRIs and other things to make it better. But, he was finding that even world-class opera singers had a slight opening of this velar-pharyngeal port.
Yes.
Well, what Ken Bozeman talks about is that, again, with getting into that really complicated reactive inertance and the other research that Ingo Tietze is doing, that a slight VPO, a slight velar-pharyngeal port opening, relieves a little bit of the pressure of that cycle of air in your vocal tract and may actually make it easier for you to mix.
Yes. Thank you.
We sometimes use a little teeny baby bit of nasality, or if you're really struggling, more of it, to get you to mix, and then we'll take it away. The thing is, in this, in my talk, as I mentioned, that, nasality has such a bad negative connotations that I tend anymore to use twang and then classify it, as you mentioned, nasal twang or oral twang as a term while using the function to get what we want.
Yeah.
And then getting the student out of that into whatever their voice actually wants to do, and then giving that a name that makes sense to them along the way. But yeah, again, it's like what you said in your talk last week. Let's focus on the function and less on the terms.
Yes. I love that. We're all going to have a new VPO address.
There you go.
No, but because that's exactly my experience. If you think of nasality as just that you open something, the nasal port is now open, and that causes a sound color. And we just stop saying, "Oh, you're singing too nasal," which can be a personal preference. And by opening that and having more air and sound going through there, it's affecting the reactive inertance, and thus the way your vocal folds are working, and thus your complete sound that's coming out. So no, you don't want that open all the time, but there are times when it can be very helpful. You just have to think of singers like Bruno Mars or the French pop singers who are using that slight VPO nasal port opening a lot more, and it can be very beneficial. And I agree, it's exactly that. It can lighten the pressure, help you find your mix, and that can be a great tool to find it. But just like Matt said, rein it in. Just because you found it, don't go overboard with the exercise again, thinking that's your one solution. It serves a purpose, and then just like with every other vocal function, you want to find where it's most efficient. There, we can go off on things on any random question, can't we? I love this. This was something I told you I wanted to discuss with my brother-in-law, who's an anesthesiologist. Does Mallampati score have anything to do with tongue or jaw tension, or does it have something to do with just the anatomical placement of the uvula, back of the mouth, how high, low, set, or both? So because we don't have a visual here, maybe you can do a speed through in talking about what the Mallampati score is and what it's looking at.
Yeah, so you're just going to grab a flashlight to check your own out. You're going to open your mouth and go, ah, right? And look inside. Now, I will show you my inside. It's, not beautiful, but ah. And you can see that uvula is way up. My tonsils are way up and out of the way. So that would be considered a score 1 on that Mallampati score. Then on the score 4, because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, on a 4, the tongue would be arched up, the palate down, everything so narrow you can't even see that uvula in the back. You can't see the tonsils in the back. Okay, so that's that Mallampati score, or Patti. I'm not pronunciation perfect on that yet. From my understanding and research, because it's something I've came across recently, is that yes, jaw tension issues, TMJ issues can affect what score you have. Yeah. So it is quite possible that you have some, abnormality in that joint that would make some difference there. And that aligns with what we know about the lower mandibular maneuver. This is something that it's Gareth Nair's widow, I think, and him were talking about a little bit before he passed, which was this idea of letting the jaw joint not only rotates, but you can drop a little space and allow it to shift forward. And when you do that, it actually opens up the back room. It increases the space between the back of your tongue and the back wall, which gives you an acoustic boost, giving a little bit more depth to the sound. It's something a lot of people do if they want that extra depth in their voice. So again, that would be, if we look at that Mallampati score, opening up, moving the inside view more towards a 1 from a 3, and that is impacted by that TMJ joint. And if you're running into problems with it, those problems are associated with the lateral pterygoid, which is a muscle that connects to the disc that floats in this joint. And if it seizes up on you, it's going to be real hard to get that opening.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a really strong correlation, it seems like, from what I've been reading between those two things. This is an area that I want to do some more research on. I just think it's useful for singers. I've always had, Lily Lehman used to do this. She used to have them use a candle and a mirror and spend the first few weeks of lessons looking in a mirror with a candle, just learning what's inside their mouth. I have so many singers, I teach them, like, have you ever looked in your mouth before to see what your palate's doing? And they've never even looked. So just go grab a light, get a mirror, see what you got to work with, and then just start playing and see how it changes along the way. Knowledge and an accurate map of your vocal tract has never harmed anyone.
Yeah, brilliant. And nowadays you just got a phone, just do a singing selfie of your throat.
Yeah.
Post it. You might get some.
Remember when the phones were small enough that people were posting YouTube videos of shoving they were doing their own laryngoscopes using cell phones.
Yeah. If you have a really big mouth,
It's not happening for me, but
iPhone X or 8 Plus or the big phones in there anymore. They're just.
no, not at all.
All right, thanks for that, Matt. We had a question about your term. Some people are like, "Is the fire word? Does that mean something? What are they talking about there?"
Fire is just what happens in a performance when you're on fire and you add a little kick to a high note. And instead of going, hey, you're like, hey, and you just put a little fire behind it, right? Just lighting it up. It is a completely non-anatomical, non-scientific word. And all it means is that moment, when you're in a performance and adrenaline kicks in and you hit the gas a little hard on it.
There you go. I love that. It's fun, but that's what we're looking for is some words that help people, and we're all going to use different words. So no, fire, we don't have fire in our throat, not an anatomical term. Is there also epilaryngeal narrowing above the folds rather than oropharyngeal constriction in twang? We touched on this, and I know you answered this in the live stream, but that's why I say for me, twang is I use it as it's a term that describes narrowing. So
yeah. I mean, so just to grab my laryngeal model here now, this is like a 450% size of a real larynx. This is that epiglottis that they're talking about. There is tissue that comes from the tissue, the epiglottis down to the arytenoids. In real life, one of the things where I teach at Shenandoah University, we have a cadaver lab, and we're allowed to go into the cadaver lab and we're allowed to dissect the bodies. And we have a collection right now of about a dozen laryngae. So we have larynxes of all different sizes that you can pull out. In general, the space between the epiglottis and the arytenoids is so small that I can't really fit my pinky finger inside most of them. Some of the really big ones I can slip it down in there, but most of the time it's just the little teeny tip of my pinky that will fit in that space. So it's super small. Mm-hmm. But definitely when that is opened up at different degrees, it's going to affect the acoustics. So in general, anything that we narrow adds brightness, and anything that we open adds depth. So as your larynx goes up, your tongue is up here attached to this hyoid bone, the larynx goes up, that might tilt back a little bit. That's going to narrow the aryepiglottic sphincter, which is that closing there, and that can add twang, as well as any other narrowing that's happening along the vocal tract, as we mentioned earlier.
Brilliant. I love it. I can't believe how much, people, singers, let me just say, if I had access to this information at any point during the first 20 years of my career for free, I would be all over that. You guys need to be watching these Q&As all the time and liking it and telling people this is an invaluable resource, honestly. And I appreciate you, Matt, sharing and being so willing to share knowledge with the world.
Like you said, sharing what I wish somebody would have told me. I could have gotten through a lot of things a lot easier too had somebody told me all this. So we gotta help the next generation so they don't suffer like we did.
Exactly. That's why we're doing this for you, singers. We're passionate about it. We want to help you, and Matt, we feel exactly the same way about it. So the next question is, I work with the under 18 crowd. Is rock singing technique safe for them? I believe it is, but I have other coaches in the area that don't and get flack for it.
Yeah, that's an old-fashioned idea, that it's unsafe. It's fine. Look, kids make all kinds of sounds all the time. They end up just fine. Where they run into trouble time and time again is when they want to sing something and they can't find somebody to help them, they will get hurt. When I came to this university where I teach now, there was a good chunk of students that had nodules or some other vocal pathology. That bothered me, obviously, a lot. So I started going, well, why do we got so many students that have vocal pathologies? And I was like, well, what have you been doing for the first, years of training? Well, we only teach them classically first. But I said, but they're in shows and they're belting. Yeah, but we don't want to work on belting with them for the first 2 years. And I said, but they're belting anyway. And they're like, well, yeah, but we don't want to teach that. I said, so that's how they're getting hurt. We do realize this, right? They're getting hurt because you're telling them to do one thing that they don't want to do. So they're going into a practice room and teaching each other how to do the thing they want to do. And everybody eventually realized, took some time to digest, and then they realized that and said, so we start teaching them to belt from freshman year? And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
because it will be better. And
Yes.
guess what our rate of problems is now? New problems developed at the university is 0. We have re-injuries because we always have a student comes in who, after they come here, they tell us they had nodules in high school, or they just discovered they had nodules before they came to school. So now we got to deal with that, and we do. But new injuries are non-existent because we help students sing the things they want to sing. So I am an adamant believer in help them. Now, the big key to helping a young person is to help them understand that microphone technology is tricking their ears into thinking these singers sound like something that they don't. So you can find, if you go on YouTube and look me up and look for audio technology, singers on and off mic, you'll find things that I've done before to talk about this. But the microphone adds artificial forward placement. It has a natural boost up in that forward placement zone. So you think the voice is edgier than it actually is in real life.
Yeah.
So we got to get the singers to start listening to their favorite artists unplugged so they can get a feel for what that voice actually sounds like. Then we got to help them all realize they're not all supposed to be Bruno Mars, Sam Smith, Ariana Grande, Whitney Houston. Some of them are going to just have nice voices that tell great stories like Taylor Swift, and they don't have to sing to the stratosphere. And when they're young, let's get them focused on artistic communication of the human experience through songs that connect with them. And then continue to let them know that, hey, if you are a biological female, an estrogen dominant singer, you're not going to hit your full respiratory capacity until the age of 20 to 21. So you're not working with a full deck yet. So when I say I don't quite think that Whitney Houston is in the bag right now, it's not because I don't believe you can do it. I think one day you can. You're just not working with your full instrument yet, and I don't want to destroy your instrument before it's time. Then we got to let our biological male or our testosterone dominant singers know that you don't reach your full respiratory capacity until closer to 25. So when you're sitting there going, well, I want to do this thing, I understand, and I'm going to help you the best I can, but we got to let nature take its course and let your voice fully mature, because if we try to shove it through now, you may never be able to do it.
Right.
But if we step back and focus on storytelling, getting your voice to be fully functional, letting it do all the things that it's ready to do now, we can keep you singing over the long term. And then eventually, when your body is ready, you will reach the goals that you've set for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. So if kids are wanting to learn to rock, they need instruction, right? So just take Matt's advice. Let's say if you have kids that want to learn vocal effects, really get them with somebody that understands that and coaches the effects, because they do need guidance, and make sure they know that it's not supposed to hurt.
No, yes, absolutely.
To hurt, and what Matt said, a lot of this is much quieter in live than the effect in the production side that makes it feel like it's just so aggressive. It is aggressive, but that's a produced sound. It doesn't sound like that. Easiest example, you can go you can just hear it. If you get close to the mic, it sounds like, but it's very quiet. So
smoke and mirrors is what I call it. It's like magic.
Smoke and mirrors. Oh, next question. Why do I feel a different muscle activity in my jaw when I open it a lot for the high notes?
Well, it could be several things. It could be you're overextending your jaw and moving it too fast. 3/4 of an inch, the width of a wine cork, is the safe zone before which this jaw joint starts to glide forward. So first it rotates, then it starts to glide forward. So if you're opening up beyond 3/4 of an inch, you may be agitating this joint. That is one of the ways long-term, like if you have a dental surgery and they jack your jaw open beyond 3/4 of an inch for several hours, you can end up with TMJ disorders, TMJD. So we want to watch that. It could also be that when you open that mouth that wide, you really put a stretch on what's called the masseter muscle, which is what connects your cheekbone to that lower jaw. And that muscle wants to snap down. And when you're really holding it out, if you hold tension in your day-to-day activities, it might feel really uncomfortable. And it's also possible that the muscles that run underneath of your larynx So we have muscles like the digastric, the mylohyoid muscles that come along the bottom of the jaw down to the hyoid bone, the geniohyoid that comes from the chin to the hyoid bone. Well, those are all muscles that are involved in helping open up your mouth. And those guys then get in a fight with that masseter muscle. Masseter muscle is trying to close. These are trying to open. They're fighting against each other, and your throat seizes up, and it makes everything feel harder than it should.
Thanks, Matt, for that. Yeah, sensations can be very individual as well. So we'd actually probably need to have you in a session and talk to you about it, see what you're doing when it happens to give you a really specific answer. But I think that was really great. And I got to talk with Matt more about the jaw muscles later. That's going to be fun. Next.
And I got a graduate exams coming up here at 2. So I'm going to do a rapid fire on these last couple ones that we got.
How frequently should we do these exercises, the exercises you suggested in your live stream?
As often as they help and that they're not fatiguing you, right? We don't want anything fatigue. You're going to have some natural fatigue. Just like if you go running, you're probably going to be tired at the end of it. So when we go to sing, at some point, you're going to be like, man, I've been singing for a while. That's probably the time to walk away. If you start losing high notes, losing power, going flat, feeling a tickling sensation or any kind of burning sensation anywhere, you're beyond the point where you should have stopped. So, in general, for a lot of these exercises that you're playing around with on your own, that you're learning through a live stream, I tell people maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. I wouldn't take it to an extreme, especially for the vocal distortion ones. I was doing like the maybe just 2 to 3 minutes every day of doing that until it feels so simple that you just go, and it's not a big deal. Once it's comfortable, then you'll start applying it to songs. And again, just incrementally so we don't damage the system along the way.
Thank you, Matt. Let's move on to the next question. How should someone prioritize practicing all these different vocal techniques, especially someone without a vocal teacher to guide them? Great question. I would say you need a guide. At some point, you need a guide. Absolutely. Everybody needs a guide. But in my opinion, take the ones that are more low impact first and make sure you're not going for the hardest things for your ability level first.
Balance your registration, like getting the head voice available to you, getting the chest voice available to you, and getting that ability to do those messa de voce exercises I talked about where you're able to go. That's a coordination issue that is pretty harmless as long as you're in a good part of your voice. You're not hitting your extreme notes. Harmless. Getting great coordination at that vocal fold level that will pay off for decades to come. It's something that people don't spend the time to do. And if you're in between the ability to get a coach right now, do that. Go through and do some of the tongue out humming, tongue articulation drills, things like that. And then when all that feels comfortable, slowly start adding in the effects. That goes exactly in line with Philippe said in his live stream as well. Get your voice clean, then add the effects on top of it. And look, I've been in your shoes before. I cannot tell you how many yards I've mowed, ceilings I've scraped, ceilings I've painted, bushes I've removed and trimmed to pay for voice lessons along the way. So I feel where you're at right now, but at some point, economically, hopefully things will change where you can get a teacher that you can afford to give you the things that you need. And like Philippe said, then, really maximize that time together with the instructor to get all the little nuances that we need somebody else to help us discover and to refine in our own instrument.
Yes, that was a great suggestion. That's what I mean by low impact, Ooh, it's not as strenuous as you don't want to start with those things. I think I just blew the mic. I wanted to talk about this question really briefly just because we have talked about it. I find that in doing this vocal fry creaking along with you, I have to actually use less air, prevent too much air from coming out in order to maintain the rattle and not have it fall apart, which is counterintuitive to me anyway. I just wanted to say on that, you're right, and it goes along the lines of what we've said in the Q&A, that there's a misconception about how loud these things need to be. It's much more subtle than most people think. I've got one more question, unless you want to add something to that.
I would say, look, I'll grab a decibel meter real quick. You can grab decibel meters on your phone. They're super cheap now to grab. And if I'm doing just my regular fry, I'm at 82 decibels, 80. If I put that on the mic, it comes off louder, like what Philippe was doing. So then grab one of those. If you're at 60 decibels, you're the volume of somebody speaking. If you're at 80, you're at the volume of somebody speaking loud. For those vocal effects, that's more than enough because you're on a microphone doing them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that. Decibel meter, people. Oftentimes when people speak of high larynx versus low, then demonstrate a low note for low larynx and a high note for high larynx. Could you demonstrate a high note with low larynx and low note with high larynx? Maybe speak to that as a way of clarifying that for those of us who struggle with that.
Perfect. So let's do what he said. You do a lot of times here. Oh, ah, because naturally that's what the larynx does. If we do a glide and you put your fingers there and you don't control the sound, you will feel that it starts low and it goes high. Ah, right? When we're trying to make any adaptations for different styles, we're trying to balance that out. So we're trying to get that top to match the bottom. So the bottom in neutral, ah, and then if I could just jump up to the top, ah, the larynx jumps. I'm going to try to get that larynx to lower. Ah, 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 to match those up. So let's talk about the opposites that you mentioned. So on the bottom note, I can do ah, which is low, or ah, which is high. On the high note, I can do ah, which is high, or ah, which is low, or ah, which is in the middle. We would use those for different moments. So let's say I'm doing some Every Rose Has Its Thorn. I don't want to be in low because I would get we both lie silently still in the dead of the night, which no one wants to hear. I instead want to get into that more electric guitar sound that's prominent in the 80s, which would be more high. We both lie silently still in the dead of the night. So I want to be able to let it go up, right? When I'm singing operatically, though, I don't want it to go up, because if I'm doing a toreador, toreador, that sounds bright and harsh. We want to drop that toreador into more of that neutral to lower position. So what I get my clients to do is to take the same pitch pattern and do each configuration, all three configurations on the same pitch pattern. So what they do is, oh, yeah, 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 blah, 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 blah. Then we do it all the way up the top. Oh, morning voice or afternoon voice there, but oh, yeah, 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 blah, 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 blah. So that their larynx is always navigating all those positions. So as you said, we don't start associating that low larynx is only for low notes and high larynx is only for high notes. Instead, we train the voice to be versatile so that you can make all the sounds across all the pitches.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's all about keeping things in movement. Don't lock your larynx in one position. And most of the exercises in the live stream Matt gave you were exercises to help you increase and maintain your range of motion. Everything is moving and singing. The range of motion is what we need to maintain and develop. Matt, thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome. It's always fun to chat with you and meet the singers on the live stream and give them information. It's like we just said a few minutes ago, this is the stuff I wish I would have had. That's why I'm so passionate about sharing it. I really believe we have to, demystify the singing. We need to get the secrets out of academia and into the hands of normal people. Everybody can learn to sing. You just got to embrace your authentic self, communicate your human experience authentically, and stop trying to be somebody else. And that's where the magic happens.
Amen to that. Join us on Voice Masters live stream live in the future, and we're here for you on YouTube. So just click the subscribe button and you'll get informed every time we release one of these new invaluable clips. Take care, everybody.
Bye.